You're listening to the E-commerce Impact Podcast, where we share the latest marketing strategies to grow your e-com store and have more impact. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the E-commerce Impact Podcast. Today I am super excited to have Sarah Actually, how do I say your name? Sarah Levinger?
Oh, that would be a cool way to say it. Levinger. That would be like sort of an Avenger, like a superhero. I'd be cool with that. It's pronounced Levinger.
Levinger.
Yeah, Levinger. Everybody says Levinger, which is, okay too. I'll take both.
Yeah, Levinger. So we have Sarah Levinger on the podcast. And Sarah, I'm so excited to have her here because I've been following Sarah for a while on Twitter and we got to know each other over there. She shares a ton of incredible content about how you can use psychology to improve the performance of your ads. So Sarah is a creative strategist and performance creative consultant, and she's got over 15 years of industry experience. And her main kind of role now is she helps D2C brands improve the ROI of their advertising with psychology-based creative. So welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's going to be fun to talk about this, I think, with you especially, because I'm obviously on the opposite side of the world from you.
Exactly. We're both in kind of mountainous places, but you're in the summer and I'm in the winter here. So, so I would love to hear from you. What do you think are the kind of main trends, or what kind of changes or trends are you seeing at the moment in terms of creative, of what's working and what techniques brands are using effectively to drive better performance?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you asked this because about 3 months ago, I would have had a totally different answer. And I feel like that's e-com in general.
Yeah, changes
every 3
so
months,
fast.
something else changes and we have a totally different set of things that we're working from. 3 months ago, I would have said 100% UGC. I think that's probably working the best right now. I've seen it across the board. Lots of brands are saying the same thing. Now I'm slowly starting to see the decline of the summer is actually changing a lot of the consumer behavior. And so we're also seeing kind of a saturation of UGC in the industry. And that happened by default. Anytime you have something that's exciting, people really want to jump on board quick. And there's a lot of UGC creators that came in very, very quickly, especially in the States. So we had a lot of good people just dumping content into the system, which I never think is a bad thing, but for UGC, it was troublesome because there's so much of it now and there's so many creators that I think the consumers are a little tired.
Exactly.
And consuming so much of it that we're getting tired.
Because that's what drives it, isn't it? So that's where a trend will go through a platform. It's the consumer's reaction to the ads and the and their kind of boredom with something that's being overused that then forces us as brands or media buyers to change what we're doing to make it interesting to them so that they then react again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So just for the audience, how would you define UGC when you're talking about it? Because the original kind of UGC for me was just someone's recorded in a lo-fi way, like a testimonial. But I feel like we've come a long way from that being the definition of UGC. So do you want to talk to the audience before we go on to what's changed and what you're seeing now as the trend? How do you see UGC and where it's at and what it kind of looks like at the moment?
Yeah. So something that I did probably 3 or 4 months ago, might be a little longer than that. I actually created a group with another US-based creator, Kristen, and we have UGC creator group that just houses about 140 some people in there now. And so it was interesting to watch how things changed. So originally UGC was made specifically and only by the users themselves. So UGC stands for user generated content. So originally it was only supposed to be from customers or potential customers or somebody that pertained to your industry.
Yeah.
I think marketers started seeing that this was a viable way to market somewhere. It's actually been around a lot longer than people think it has. It's been around for about 3 or 4 years, basically since the inception of TikTok. But marketers started noticing it was very viable for advertising sometime early last year in the summer, spring and summer. And it just kind of exploded through last year. So there's different terms for it now. UGC is one I hear a lot. User generated content has kind of been a blanket term for any sort of content that's created to look like it's been generated by a user. I have heard the term CGC, which is creator generated content, which technically is more accurate because it's generated by someone who's an actor, basically a paid actor. And then there's another term I've seen floating around, IGC, which is influencer generated content. So I think the industry's trying to label it so that we can understand it better. But so far, UGC just blanket term.
Yeah. So UGC would include stuff that's being paid for and created by someone who's quite an experienced creator or an actor.
Yeah.
Right down to like something that's just like a review. Okay. So that was 3 months ago, you would have said that is the type of creative that's working, and that's what, you would advise a brand to do. And what are you saying now?
Now it's very interesting because I think people want a specific type. Is it a static? Is it a meme? Is it GIFs? Is it carousels? What's working? From my standpoint, I always believe that psychology is what works best. So for my clients and the people that work with me, I push forward that message of the best thing that is working today and what will probably work from now until the next 25 to 50 years is always consumer psychology. If you can put some emotion behind your ad, it works a lot better than if you just paid someone to pretend that they purchased your product and are doing a review. Not a bad way to do it. UGC is a really good way to get a little bit of traction. But I always want to see people trying to put a little bit more empathy and emotion into their ads.
So it's like use the format that we know is working, which is like a more organic style of ad that's more authentic, that's not necessarily polished and made by videographers and cameramen and all of that, but use it in a way that's more clever than just the creator saying that the product is good. Actually tap into like, what are the emotions we want to hit? What is the kind of, who is the people we're talking to as well? Like, do you want to talk to me about that? Because I know you've done some really interesting work around, like, what generation your customer is from, whether they're like more of a family-based kind of a person or more of a friend-based person. Like, tell me about how you change the ads based on the audience and how you go about that.
Yeah. So, and to your point, this is a fantastic point. The type of the ad doesn't necessarily matter. It doesn't have to be professionally produced. It doesn't have to be a static, a carousel. It doesn't have to be a GIF. The type of the ad doesn't really make too much of a difference. I preface that with too much because there's certain like types of like psychology that you can use to help people move forward in your ads, specifically random things. Like for some reason they've done studies and the human eye really enjoys blinking lights, soft, light, white ones in particular. So GIFs are a great way to get people's attention if you're using something that kind of looks like a Christmas light in your ad. Just because people really like those soft lights, like fireflies for some reason. We're really into those type of lights, which I think is why people love Christmas, because it's all that. But if you can use these type of things, that it just helps people stop the scroll. So I say that was like a little bit of give. So the type doesn't really matter, but it helps. From like a deep standpoint, though, from foundational standpoints, I want to go beyond just what type of marketing are you using? Because everybody likes to branch out into, are you using direct response marketing? Are you doing traditional marketing? Are you doing copywriting based marketing? What type of marketing are you doing? I like those frameworks because they help us kind of build a structure around how we're testing, but we need to go way, way deeper than just what's the framework of marketing that we're using. I really think the majority of marketing is shifting towards this anyways, but the psychology of humans is going to come into play a lot because we have lost so much targeting over the last 6-8 months to a year. We're getting to the point now where there's not going to be a great way to qualify your customers without deep research into who they are. So my business starts with the research always. We go in and do comment aggregation. So I'm pulling comments from absolutely everywhere. Anywhere I can find them. The majority of them are coming off of the actual ads themselves that the brands are running, or TikTok, Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. We'll take them, we'll pull them in and actually put them in a spreadsheet. I was doing this by hand for quite a while, but it's now to the point where I'm starting to develop an actual AI program that will do this, because it took me a while to get these all done. But I'll take them in and I'll actually pull out specific word phrases and emotional types. So, for example, I had a brand that I was working with, and I just actually finished up with them about a month ago. They have basically like a non-alcoholic tea that they put hops into. So it's not beer. It's like a non-alcoholic tea is the only way to describe it. It's really good. It sounds like it would be the strangest thing you've ever tasted, but it's delicious. I've had quite a few now, and they're really good. So they came to me and said, we want more information about who our customers are and what they want out of this product. Our retention is fantastic. We're just struggling with acquisition because it's so expensive to promote on Facebook or anywhere else.
Yeah.
And so I went and did the research, and we found a couple things. One, their customers were using phrases like, this product saved my life, or I couldn't have done it without this brand. Things that you would only say if you were talking to a really close friend. And I was really interested by that because the way you phrase things and the order which you put the words in changes the meaning of the actual language you're using. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the things we pulled out is, for some reason, they are like making a friend relationship with the brand, which is pretty intense for a brand that sells, just a product. It's just the CPG product. So on top of that, we pulled out a couple different life events that were happening. So one, obviously, somebody who's sober needs a non-alcoholic product. Somebody who recently went like alcohol free for their health. These are the two that we know already and we have been running ads to for a while. But one of the ones that we pulled out that was very strange was breastfeeding and pregnant moms.
Oh.
And I was like, I would have never thought of that. You don't equate breastfeeding and pregnant moms with alcohol. That doesn't really, especially in the States, that's just not something that's very common over here. So it's interesting because these particular moms kept using that phrase over and over. Like, I'm so glad you made this. Like, it made my life so much easier. I can't drink alcohol because I'm breastfeeding or because I'm pregnant. And this just made it easier to stay social. So all of the beginning research started with, okay, who are we talking to? What are they doing in life? Like, what emotions are they feeling? But it ends with the deeper core thing that they're trying to solve. So usually everybody starts with the core needs as children: security, community, engagement. They don't really outgrow those. They just get worse as you get older. And as you get older, if you found one in your childhood that doesn't really get solved, it just kind of balloons. So for this particular crowd, they really valued their social time. They really missed being a part of the alcoholic crowd. That was a big deal to them. And so we pulled that out of the research, and I went back to the brand and said, I think your crowd wants a message of inclusivity. They would like to be included, which is so weird because that's not what the brand was really pointing at. They were just pointing at functional, right? Where you need a non-alcoholic beer, here is one. That's why the research is so important, because we pulled out an emotional driver that's way bigger than just you need a non-alcoholic beer. So I told them 100% through your entire brand, I always want to see you pushing and driving acceptance and support, because these people really want to feel supported in their journey of, I'm not drinking anymore, but I still want to be a part of the alcoholic crowd. So that's a synopsis of kind of how the research works. But then we'll dive into creative audit, take a look at what's happening in the actual account. And then we drive all of that research and all of the bulk of the audit into strategy. So how do you take that research and use it? Usually I will take that and do a whole bunch of analysis on what type of imagery do you need to see to feel what you want to feel. And also on the copy side, what kind of copy do you need to read to feel what you need to feel? Super important going forward nowadays, because we cannot make connections with people just based upon lever lifting in the ad accounts anymore. It's all creative based.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, so you're identifying that core underlying kind of human need or emotion first, and then you're figuring out creatively how to communicate that and push that button so that the people that you want to talk to respond, right? That's so interesting. And what would you do if you, I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't work with startups, but what would you do if you're working with a brand new brand that didn't have comments? Would you look at like their competitors' comments, or how would you go about doing research in that case? Yeah.
This is a tricky one, because without comments, we can't tell who's already in their market base. And I struggle with going towards a competitor, because even if you're in the same industry and you think you have the same customers, depending on what messaging you're putting out, you actually have completely different ones. So they might all have the same need, but it's a very different type of person you're drawing in. So for new brands or for service-based businesses who don't have a whole lot of like product comments, I would say surveys are the only way you're going to be able to understand who and why you're marketing. And so I used to provide a whole lot of customer insight surveys. I don't do it as much anymore because it's difficult work.
Yeah.
It's hard to get people on the phone, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
So, but if you can, even some sort of written survey would be better than nothing at this point. It's a little bit difficult too to do written surveys because how you phrase questions will change the way the answer comes back. So if I asked you, is your favorite color blue or green? You would think about it, right? But if I asked you, is your favorite color blue or green? Then you'd probably be like, well, she doesn't like green. Should I not choose green?
Yeah.
Like it changes the way that you answer. So if you're going to do surveys, be very careful about how you frame those questions. But yeah, if you've got nowhere else to go, talk to your customers. Go find a customer, sit down with coffee and just talk to them. Or even better, let them talk to you.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's amazing how many brands will go through, quite a few life cycles before they've even talked to a customer. That's insane.
It's amazing how far they can get without talking to a customer. Really, I'm kind of impressed. Eventually, you hit a ceiling, though. I've met thousands of brands at this point that are like, well, we can't grow past this point. I'm like, well, you should probably talk to your customers.
Yeah. So with a brand like this, is it a tea? Did you say?
Yeah, it's like coffee tea. Yeah.
It sounds so cool. I mean, because I don't drink, and I'm always looking. I'm really sociable. I'm always looking for. I'm the customer basically.
Yeah.
I wonder if they ship to New Zealand.
They probably do. They're based in Boulder, Colorado, so they're like in my backyard. Mm-hmm.
So in the case of that customer, how do you then, I'd love to hear kind of on a practical level how that then turns into a brief if you are then still using UGC creators to actually create the content. How does it then translate? Yes,
that's a great question. So most brands I work with beforehand, before doing all of this research, because I used to be a media buyer at a long time ago, obviously. That's how I got into this game. When I was doing the brief for them, trying to create UGC without any sort of research, I was basically deciding what the UGC creator should say. So we would either send a script, say this exact thing. We want you to hit our benefits. You want to hit our highlights, our features. Please say our USP, and then do a call to action. So I was basically trying to teach direct response marketing. Whereas now I give the creators more creative freedom. So I don't want to give them any sort of this is what you have to say. Because for UGC creators, I think I used to be one, so it's very difficult for us to take a script and say it in a way that would make it sound natural to us. Because the script is written by a specific person. So that person's voice is coming through the script. So it's better if you can let your UGC creators just say what they need to say. That's tip number one. Tip number two, I would give your UGC creators a persona, a character to put on. Not necessarily a specific thing to say. I wouldn't even give them any sort of functional system. I mean, most of the UGC creators nowadays understand direct response marketing, so they understand how to lead into the call to action, which is nice. But if you can give them a character to play, that's way easier. So the last person that I actually did this with was a UGC creator. She's super, super talented, Bren. Shout out to Bren. She was one of the people I was working with on this particular tea brand. And when I sent her the brief, I said, okay, here's the highlights of the customer that we are looking for. So I gave her the report and just said, this is the customer, this is what they're feeling. Can you play the character of a breastfeeding mom who maybe wants to go out with her friends this Friday, but is worried that she's not going to be accepted because she can't drink? Can you play that person? And she was like, yeah, I mean, that makes way more sense to me. 100%, I can play that person. So we need to stop thinking of our UGC creators as content creators and start thinking of them as actors, because that's what they are. And you would never go to Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie or any of the big players, Chris Pratt. You would never go to Chris Pratt and be like, say this only this way. They give him a script and then they say, you iterate how you would say it because you're the actor. So I preface that too, obviously he gets a script. And I just said, don't give a script. But he's given a character to play first. He understands who the character is. So the UGC creator should get the same. They are actors, give them a character to play.
I love this. It's so cool. And so you're going to select your UGC creator who's somewhat similar to the persona, right?
Yes.
like age, kind of lifestyle, that kind of thing. So that must be the first thing, is like making sure the brand from the get-go is working with creators that are a really good fit for their audience. So they need to know how their audience is, because if they're trying to, if they didn't realize that their audience was like boomers and then they had all these 18-year-olds in their ads, it's just not going to work, is it?
Yes. Well, the interesting part is you have to understand what your audience is trying to accomplish, because if you're going to do an ad with a breastfeeding mom in that ad, you probably don't want to show her going to a friend group full of guys, because most moms that I know, at least, don't really hang out with like a huge group of only guy friends. They will hang out with a bunch of other married people, because that, or like couples in general, not necessarily married, but like they'll hang out with a bunch of couples. So you need to find a group of people instead of just guys. On the opposite side, if you have somebody that you need to show specifically who they want to become instead of who they are, say you're like selling some sort of a workout program or something, then the person in your ad shouldn't show who they want to be. It should show who they are now. And then work through the process of showing them who they could become. I see a lot of ads with a very like fit person in front of it. And that works for drawing people in because that's what they want to see. But it doesn't necessarily work for purchasing and actually keeping them in the program, because they'll disconnect at some point psychologically with that person. We need to see people who look and act like me doing the things I want to do.
Yeah.
It's a better way to sell. It really is, across the board.
It's so true, isn't it? I mean, that's what Ezra and Boom have done for years, you know, like just actually showing real women of that age in their ads, and those women feel so seen, and that's why he's got a, whatever it is, $150 million company. Billion or something. Whatever.
Boom figured it out early, I think. Show people that look and feel like you. You don't have to be in the same demographic. It doesn't have to be the exact same ethnicity or even the same sex. It just has to feel like you. It doesn't have to be the exact same gender or any of that. They just have to feel like me. That's all. It's feeling all the way.
And so do you work with brands through that whole process of actually like kind of selecting and auditioning the UGC creators for them?
Yeah. Well, and it was really helpful. Again, that UGC group kind of happened on accident. It was a tweet that I put out one day that was like, does anybody want to start a group? Because I'm a UGC creator and I would love to partner with people. And then it just kind of like grew from there. So I'm lucky enough that I have a ton of really talented creators in my group that I can refer to people. So it helps a lot if you can work with a UGC creator who knows other UGC creators, for sure.
Yeah, so there's a whole, for those who don't realize this, there's kind of a whole world of these people on Twitter, right? Like that's what I noticed when I joined Twitter, was like getting followed by UGC creators and hearing them kind of interact with each other and people calling out for looking for UGC creators. I think it feels very daunting for a brand to try and navigate that and try and figure out who to pick and where to find them. Like, what are your top tips for brands that are delving into this space for the first time and wanting to create UGC and find the right creators to work with?
Yeah. Well, one of the best places to go is Twitter. I agree, because there's so many of us over there. It is really difficult to vet who is a good creator, quote unquote, and who's like just a beginner, who's still learning, those type of things. I would say the best way to do it is to follow the greats, like follow the people who have been doing this for a long time. And I can give you some people, obviously. Kristen Jones is one of the best I've seen in the industry. She's a marketing director and a UGC creator. So she's got both worlds covered. So she's got good experience with it. She's also just a really good actress in the UGC itself. Like, she would just be a good actress in general. If she wanted to be famous, I would follow her because she's really good. Other people in the industry, Bren is one of my favorite. Bren's creative. She's really, really good. She's also just very talented from like a strategy standpoint. So she's got a lot of good experience as well. Some of the other big talented names in there. Lauren Labels does a lot. That's actually two girls that I know that do a ton of UGC. Savannah Sanchez is probably one of the biggest in the industry, although I don't think she does UGC anymore. I think she just manages a bunch of UGC creators. But I would go over to Twitter and follow these, 4 or 5 people, and then see which UGC creators they are following. Because as soon as you find one, you'll be able to network with pretty much all the rest of them. And it's also nice because you'll get good referrals. It's not that the younger crowd or like the newer UGC creators aren't good at what they do. It's more about marketing experience. If you're a good UGC creator, you usually have a paid advertising background.
Interesting. Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to learn it, which takes some time.
Yeah. So we're looking a little bit for unicorns, people that actually have a strategic marketing background, as well as a love of creating content, and then as well as having the right demographic, the right look, the right looking house, all of that stuff. So there's a lot you have to pick through, I imagine.
Yeah.
And so I guess with you, it's like you've got your go-to people for different types of brands, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that must help a lot. Okay, interesting. And to what extent, like what proportion of the ads that you see being created that are successful are using a voice? Because I know for my UK clients and followers, like this industry isn't as established in the UK, but we know these kind of ads are probably at an earlier stage where they're going to probably be as effective as they were 3 or 4 months ago in the UK, because it's just not as advanced. Mm-hmm. But like, if accent is a problem for the brand, like, do you think you could use these creators to create ads that just don't have a voice involved?
Yeah.
Or would that be too much of a constraint? Or
some of the best ads I've ever seen did not have any voiceover at all.
Yeah.
They had music. I have seen a few tested with absolute silence that did extremely well. And again, it's interesting because most people will tell you, well, we don't know why it did well. It just did well. I can usually tell you why it did well because it's the psychology of what goes into it. If you can track and see where people are dropping off the video, you can tell what's going on psychologically. There's pieces in the ad that will pop up and basically, wax and wane, that people will start to drop off at a particular point because it's too much what's known as cognitive load. It's just too heavy on the brain to process it. This usually happens, I've noticed, when you have a lot of busy, crazy stuff in the background and you try and put text on top of it. But as far as the voices go, I don't necessarily think you need a voiceover, as long as you are telling a story visually and it's captivating enough that it triggers the subconscious to realize this ad is for me. You don't really need someone talking.
Yeah, totally. You gave me an example before we started recording of an ad that was like a real mismatch between the emotion the ad wanted to convey and the actual emotion being seen by the creator in the ad. Do you want to talk to me a bit about that? I found that quite fascinating.
Yeah. So it's interesting because a lot of the time I'll find ads in particular that have double standards. They're trying to put forward a particular message because they think this is what's going to draw people in. What they don't realize, though, is the message they're putting forward towards the people who don't know the brand is completely different. So this particular ad was for a razor company, pretty big one that I've noticed their ads are really nice. Like, they've done a great job understanding their customer. But this one in particular was really odd. So it was a picture of a gentleman with a shaven face, and the only thing you could see in the ad was a bunch of hands, like probably 8-ish hands, like all over his face, just touching everywhere. And it was interesting.
It's like the labyrinth. Yeah. Isn't there like a scene in the labyrinth where there's all the hands?
Such a creepy ad. So creepy. And it was interesting because his face, he looked uncomfortable. Like, he was a very very just uncomfortable looking face. It just made me uncomfortable looking at it. And the text on the ad said something to the effect of, like, a shave so smooth that people won't stop touching it, something like that. And it was interesting because I think what the marketer probably thought was, this will be great. They'll get this message right away that, like, he's uncomfortable because people love touching his face. But the unfortunate part is people are reading the face of the person that they can see in the image, which is this gentleman who looks very uncomfortable. The other unfortunate part is they're going to equate that anxiety with the brand. Whether or not they do it consciously doesn't matter. Yeah. They're going to do it subconsciously. Anxiety with this particular brand. Now, it does not mean that this is going to stick with the brand forever. Like, obviously, people are going to see more and more ads. But we have to be careful about what we put out there because images are processed by the brain 60,000 times faster than text. That's a lot of speed on image recognition. So if you're going to put ads out there, be very careful about what message the image is portraying. People spend like thousands and thousands of dollars every single month to hire a very good copywriter to make sure the message in a text form is very curated. And then they'll just slap whatever image they find on top of it. And I'm like, guys, we gotta be more careful than that. because the image is what's being processed first, not the text.
Yeah. I mean, what's so interesting to me with that example is like, I bet that ad stopped the scroll, and I bet it had probably had a good click-through rate. Like it grabbed attention, you know, it might have had a low cost per click. But did it actually convince people to convert? No, because they arrived at the site feeling icky and they were just curious and they were just kind of weirded out, and it was just like the wrong people probably even. Yeah. So that's super interesting. Yeah. Switching tack then, which brands do you think are doing this super well at the moment? Who do you kind of look to for inspiration, ideas? Who do you think is kind of totally nailing it?
Yeah. So it's interesting because some of the ads that I follow the most are not doing a whole lot of UGC. They're doing their own thing, which I think is super smart. So one of the biggest ones I follow that does creative really well is Obvi. They're a supplement brand in the United States, and I think they're branching out farther as well. But their ads are always really, really spot on, which is interesting because they're highly text-heavy ads. They have like just tiny little bits of images in them, but the majority of it is all text-based, which I think they do on purpose because they have a lot of information to convey. But they also do a fantastic job of qualifying the customer really quickly through what their ads are generated. So a lot of the time I'll see a specific phrase on there. So stick to your fitness goals or something like that. But then they'll just change it just slightly for the next ad. And it'll say something like, I don't know, improve your health type of a thing. Stick to your fitness goals and improve your health. Two totally different customers that they're going after there. But they're working. It's working extremely well. And they have a lot of creative. So they're doing a really good job about qualifying people through a text base. Some of the most beautiful ads I've seen that qualify people well through an image is probably Slumberkins, I would say, does a really good job. They're like what would you call them? They're like kind of like a kids and parents mental health industry, like a book and industry. So they're mostly in kind of like a therapeutic, I don't even know what you'd call it, but they have books and they have stuffed animals that will pair together that teach kids concepts about mental health and things like that. Their imagery is really good because they're all stuffed animal based. And so they only need product on a simple background and they get so many clicks. Like the amount of stuff that they're selling is amazing because it's simplified. They understand that their audience wants simple, right? Obvi's audience kind of wants that busy, really like heavy lifestyle based. Slumberkins understands their customers really well. They just know they want something a little more simplistic. So I just like those two companies. They have a really good base on who their customers are and what they want to see from an ad.
Cool. Yeah, we'll link to the ad libraries in the show notes so we can have a look around. And are they using UGC or are they using more like graphical or a bit of both?
It's interesting because Slumberkins is using quite a lot of UGC. One of the most recent ones I found was a picture of this like really fluffy, stuffed, I think it was an octopus, and it said, "My jelly don't jiggle jiggle," which is amazing to me because if you know that trend, like there's a trend on TikTok right now of a rap that just talks about my money don't jiggle jiggle, it folds. As soon as you hear that song, you know what that song is if you've heard that TikTok. So I'm like, oh my gosh, whoever their creative like content person is brilliant because they took a trend and put it into an ad. And it didn't take much. They just took a song and applied it to their product. And I'm sure that one is just converting because it's smart. It's so clever.
It's so interesting, isn't it? So it's like, you've got to combine. Our life just got so hard.
Yeah.
You've got to combine scroll stopping, attention grabbing.
Yep.
Hitting the right psychological buttons. And then also like the zeitgeist or like what's going on in our culture and our world and making sure that for your audience who you understand well because you've done your research, what are they consuming? What are they laughing at? What's making them like pay attention at the moment? And so if you can combine those three elements, you'll have a winning ad. And it's so funny, like we have like in the agency we have this concept of like the unicorn ad where like we test and test ads and then we get an ad that is like suddenly just goes crazy and our clients are like, well, why can't we get another ad like that? And we're like,
well, do that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. But this episode is actually the answer because if we reverse engineered why that ad performed so well, I can bet you it probably hits at least 2 or 3 of those pillars, and that's the reason why the algorithm loves it because we have to please the algorithm And the algorithm is pleased when the users are pleased, right?
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
So yeah, super interesting. Oh, I love all this stuff. I could talk to you for hours. Is there anything else you'd like to add for our audience? Any tips or advice on using psychology in their ads to make them perform better?
Yes. So obviously the basis of all of this goes back to the research. How much you know your customers is going to change the entirety of your business. If you cannot get it through comments, please do some sort of survey. Any sort of written or in-person survey would be better, because then you can see their face and hear the tone expression of what they're actually trying to convey to you. And then take those and use it to build your creative strategy from, instead of guessing or instead of pushing all of the responsibility. And this is something I talk about a lot on Twitter. Don't push all of your responsibility onto your media buyers quite yet, because they are just beginning to understand how to use creative strategy to form your, paid advertising strategy. This is the reason why I think creative strategists are going to become more and more important as we go along, because they're the type of person that can do both data and creative. You need that unicorn person that can do both. But this is only going to become more important, and I think it's going to become a bigger need as we move forward, because, man, iOS just killed off everything, but it also created an amazing opportunity. If you can get content correct, you have an amazing ability to just completely blow everybody away, because you can do something that your competitors will not.
Yeah, totally. And that's something that a machine can't do.
Exactly.
It's that human creative element. Yeah, not yet anyway.
Exactly.
We'll wait for the AI to catch up. Awesome. Well, where can everybody follow you, find you, hear more from Sarah?
Yeah, so find me over on Twitter. It's at Sarah Levinger, Sarah with an H, Levinger, Levinger. And then my website actually just got completely rebranded, because I'm like, I should probably work on my own branding at some point. My business always gets shoved to the back because I'm always working on everybody else. But my website is hgperformancecreative.com. And yeah, I'm always up for conversations with anybody. If you have any sort of strategy questions, hit me up on Twitter, DM me, because I'm happy to share more. I'm obsessed with this stuff. Yeah. Everybody can find me there.
Awesome. Well, I'll add all your details in the show notes so people can find you. Well, thanks so much for coming along.
Thank you. This is so fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks so much for joining us here on the E-Commerce Impact Podcast. If I can ask you one favor, can you please make sure you subscribe? And if you can, leave us a review. It helps us have a much bigger impact with what we're trying to do here at the E-Commerce Impact Podcast. Now, if you're ready to take your e-com store to the next level, then go to www.ecommerceimpactpodcast.com and click on the button to book a strategy call with me or my team. We offer a free order of your advertising and a custom growth plan, so you really have nothing to lose by getting in touch and jumping on a call with us. See you soon, and watch out for the next episode in 2 weeks' time.